want to open by saying, as usual, we welcome the attendance. This is a public meeting, and certainly we enjoy people coming here. On the other hand, we have a zero-tolerance policy for either interruptions or, for that matter, attempting to somehow communicate with either any members of the committee or witnesses. So everybody knows what the penalty for that is. It's arrest and ban from the committee for a year, and it's been happened only infrequently this year. We hope it never happens again. Nonetheless, we have zero tolerance for that, and we have important business to do. We can't do it if we're interrupted. So with that, I want to thank our nominees for being with us today, and most importantly, to them and their families for willing to serve in these important positions that help govern this country. We're proud to have moved 33 of President Trump's nominees through this committee and look forward to moving your nominations through just the same. We're at a blistering speed compared to the previous administrations, and that is done with the cooperation and, just as importantly, the urging of the President of the United States. Mr. Hellberg, as the Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, you'll work on an extensive list of issues that will be exceptionally important as we compete with our adversaries around the world, particularly China. The CCP, Chinese Communist Party, threatens U.S. leadership globally through its competition to control emerging technologies, abusive trade practices, and economic coercion. Following the previous administration's failure to promote U.S. economic interest, you will be responsible for states' role in renewing American prosperity, including a robust strategy to promote U.S. energy and technology abroad. I look forward to hearing your plans. Mr. Puzder, over the last 3 years, Putin's aggression has created the largest security crisis in Europe since the Second World War. President Trump is working diligently to help end this conflict, but we must keep pushing our European allies to increase their security cooperation. As ambassador to the European Union, your role will require hard conversations with America's closest allies to urge them to meet the threats they face from Russia. You must also work with your counterpart at NATO to ensure U.S. security interests are reflected in European policy. As you understand, security investments from the EU must benefit members of all our alliances, not just Europe. I hope you'll deliver a firm message to our European allies. America is a reliable partner, but it's not an ATM. Mr. Kapoor, as Assistant Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs, you have an expansive and challenging region. Many countries in South and Central Asia want to work with us. We need to build on that desire and create deeper partnerships that advance American interests. But at the same time, we will need to have frank conversation about China's growing influence and threats to regional security, particularly in South Asia. The recent conflict between India and Pakistan is deeply concerning and has shown us that we must continue our counterterrorism cooperation across the region. The U.S. shares national security interests with both countries, and we need peace between them. Additionally, the Biden administration's efforts to sweep its failures in Afghanistan under the rug meant turning a blind eye to oppression and a growing threat of terrorism in the country. It will be part of your job to turn the trajectory around and keep Americans safe. Mr. Black, as you know, one of our best tools to counter Chinese economic aggression is harnessing American ingenuity and spreading it to countries in need to the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Congress created the DFC in partnership with President Trump, and it has proven to be critical in advancing U.S. economic and strategic interests. But since its creation, the agency has struggled to fill its dual mandate to catalyze development and invest in sectors that move the needle in protecting our national security interests. That's why the ranking member and I are working on legislation to ensure DFC delivers both strategic and development value. We want the agency to attract talent, become more risk tolerant, and operate efficiently and effectively. If confirmed, you'll be taking the helm of the DFC at a critical juncture. I look forward to working with you to improve it. Mr. Brody, as ambassador to Finland, you'll step into a role very near to NATO's border with Russia. Finland contributes a good amount of their GDP to defense spending and has a robust defense industrial base. We appreciate these contributions to our collective defense, but like all of us, Finland could do more. After all, its strategic location means that for its own security, Finland must play a role in protecting the Baltic Sea from Russian hybrid operations, risks posed by its shadow fleet, and in securing the Arctic from Russian and Chinese expansion. Mr. Brody, I look forward to hearing more about how you plan to work with Finland to counter Russian aggression and advance American security interests. I believe you'll find Finland is a willing partner. A lot of us here, pressed very hard to get them into NATO, and they're in now. They have a long relationship with Russia. You'll find it quite interesting in dealing with them. These are exciting but challenging times in foreign policy. Without a doubt, the work you do will be mentioned in history books for decades. I look forward to seeing what you accomplish to make America more secure and prosperous. Thank you and your families for willingness to serve and for being with us. Now I'll turn to the distinguished ranking member to help shed light on these important issues.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would just add to your comment about the speed with which we're trying to get our ambassadorial nominees on the ground, that in addition to the President and to your leadership, the Democratic minority has been very important in helping to move those nominees in a way that is important to the country. I hope that's a model that will continue regardless of who the next president is, because it's in America's interest to have our nominees on the ground. Now, welcome to each of you. Congratulations on your nomination. Welcome to your families and friends who are here to support you. From leading diplomatic missions in Europe to guiding policy in South Asia to promoting economic growth at the State Department or the Development Finance Corporation, one of your most important responsibilities, if you are confirmed, will be protecting the United States from our adversaries. Mr. Hellberg, you've been nominated to be Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. In the past, you've been outspoken in supporting tougher U.S. action toward the Chinese, towards their use of technology and foreign influence. And whether it's space technology or renewable energy or artificial intelligence, Beijing is working to outcompete the United States. But your ethics agreement, which is designed to safeguard taxpayer dollars and our national security, lists these sectors as potential conflicts of interest. So I'm going to be interested in hearing how you will be able to work to counter China's influence if you have to recuse yourself or avoid participating in meetings on these topics. Mr. Black, you've been nominated to lead the Development Finance Corporation, and while we don't yet know the full scope of DFC's responsibilities, you've written about prioritizing private equity investments, something that we all agree needs to change with DFC. Until recently, the U.S. Agency for International Development and the Millennial Challenge Corporation were laying the groundwork for private investment by building roads, installing electricity, delivering fresh water. And without these development projects, it will be harder for the DFC to attract the private investments necessary to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. So if confirmed, how will you ensure countering adversaries remains one of the DFC's priorities? And given DFC leadership of the U.S.-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, how will you look out for both the United States and Ukrainian interests in the critical minerals deal? Mr. Kapoor, you've been nominated to be Assistant Secretary for South Asian Affairs. Not only does this post encompass a recent worrying military exchange between India and Pakistan, two states with nuclear weapons, it also includes Afghanistan, a country I don't believe we should simply wash our hands of now that the Taliban is in charge. That's also true for the Afghans who stood with our service members and diplomats and answered the call to promote women's rights and minority rights and democracy in Afghanistan. So, if confirmed, what will you do to make sure we do not abandon Afghan SIVs and refugees, including those safely resettled in the United States? Mr. Brody and Mr. Putzer, you've been nominated to serve in posts representing the U.S. in Finland and the EU. I'd like to hear how you will bring an end to this senseless tariff brawl with our European allies, which is costing American consumers on a daily basis. I also hope you'll speak to how you will reassure our European allies facing the threat of Russian aggression. It appears that President Trump has caught on to Putin's delaying tactics, which I believe is a step in the right direction. But we need to find ways to keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin and Russia. like the Graham-Blumenthal sanctions bill that has overwhelming support in the Senate from over 80 Senate sponsors? How will you use your posts to give President Trump and the United States more leverage against Russia? Finally, Mr. Petzer, in addition to these substantive questions, I want to address concerns about your fitness for this position. You were nominated to serve as Secretary of Labor in the first Trump administration, but Republican members of this Senate refused to confirm you. The facts have not changed in the last 8 years, but this committee needs to conduct its own due diligence on your suitability for this role and for Senate confirmation. And frankly, some of the past statements and allegations against you are deeply concerning. So I look forward to hearing from you and from all of our nominees today. Thank you all. And again, thank you for being willing to continue to serve this country.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. How this is going to work, we got a few introductions senators want to make, and then we will hear each of you for about 5 minutes. Try to keep it to 5 minutes. We can, if it's longer than that, you can certainly put other statements in the record if you wish. Then we'll open it up to a round of 5-minute questions back and forth. So let's start. Senator Cotton is a very busy senator, and he's graced us with his presence this morning to make an introduction. So, Senator Cotton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Risch and Senator Shaheen, members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Good morning. I want to congratulate all of our nominees, many of whom I know personally, and thank them for their willingness to serve the country. But I'm specifically here today to introduce a true America First patriot, Mr. Benjamin Black, who's joined today by his wife, Charlotte. And I understand the two of you are also celebrating your wedding anniversary tomorrow. So first, I want to congratulate you. And second, I want to say, I hope you have something better in mind than this hearing for your anniversary. I also want to thank Ben for answering the call to serve our nation as the Chief Executive Officer of the United States International Development Finance Corporation. I'm here today to offer my full support for Mr. Black's nomination to serve in this position. Created during the first Trump administration, the International Development Finance Corporation facilitates overseas investment projects that better position us to compete with Communist China's global infrastructure pursuits. This position requires a person with expertise in strategic investment opportunities, an understanding of America's foreign policy priorities, and tested leadership capabilities. For these reasons, I'm confident that President Trump made the right choice in selecting Mr. Black for the job. Mr. Black has spent more than 15 years working in credit and equity investing. He's the founder and managing partner of Fortinbras Enterprises, a multi-strategy credit investment firm. Previously, he served as the senior portfolio manager and head of credit at Michael Milken's Knowledge Universe Holdings, as principal and co-founder of OCB Partners, and as an associate at Apollo Global Management. Additionally, Mr. Black is on the boards of Ascent Hospitality, Peninsula Real Estate, and the Naval War College. He is a member of the Global Advisory Council of the Woodrow Wilson Center and a member of the advisory board at Harvard's Center for Public Leadership. Along with his family, Mr. Black provides support to veterans and active duty members of our armed forces attending Harvard's JFK School of Government, Harvard Business School, and Harvard Law School, where Mr. Black received not only an MBA, but a JD, in addition to the BA he received from University of Pennsylvania in history and the Masters of Law he has from New York University. He has, as we say in Arkansas, more degrees than a thermometer. All of this is to say, simply, that I believe Mr. Black will bring a wide range of experience and expertise to this job. I'm pleased to support his nomination, and I urge all of my colleagues on the committee and the Senate to join me in doing the same. Senator Risch, Senator Shaheen, thank you for allowing me to appear.
Senator Cotton, thank you very much for those good remarks. And I know you got other stuff to do, so you're welcome to stay, but understand you have other fish to fry, so to speak. Senator Cruz, I believe, well, actually, Senator Scott was here first. Let's give him a run at this. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. It's my honor today to introduce my friend, Jacob Hilberg, President Trump's nominee to serve as Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment to this committee. I've had the privilege of knowing and collaborating with Mr. Hilberg for several years now. He's smart, hardworking, with a wide breadth of expertise. Years ago, when I was warned about the growing threats of Communist China, he joined me for a roundtable discussion. We've continued to work together on this and several other issues. It is wholly unsurprising to me then that when President Trump was selecting someone to serve in this important role, Mr. Hilberg stood out in both the depth of his experience and his willingness to serve. Jacob is someone who deeply loves this country. As a grandchild of 2 Holocaust survivors, he personally understands the reality of global threats and also the unshakable value of the American dream. He's a patriot. He recognizes that America's strength begins at home with a strong economy, abundant energy, and the freedom to innovate. He is principled, he listens, and he brings people together to solve hard problems. He's been a leading voice on the threat of Communist China to the American and global economies and to our national security. He's worked at the forefront of America's response to authoritarianism, supply chain insecurity, and energy dependency. He's worked in both the private and public sectors. As someone who ran businesses before embarking on government service, I can confirm Mr. Hilberg embodies the bold qualities of both. At a time when the lines between economics and national security are increasingly intertwined, Jacob's knowledge from semiconductors to critical minerals to countering Xi and Communist China is indispensable. But what stands out even more than Mr. Hilberg's policy depth is his character. I have every confidence that he will serve this country with honor and distinction, and I'm confident he will be a strong asset to the team President Trump and Secretary of State Rubio have assembled to pursue peace through strength. He has my full support. I urge my colleagues to advance his nomination quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. We appreciate that. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me say to each of the nominees, I have multiple friends here today. Welcome, congratulations. I'm confident you're all going to do a terrific job. Although, Mr. Black, I'll say you have too many damn degrees from Harvard. You may have lost my vote just based on that. It is my honor right now to introduce today Howard Brody. Howard is a Yale Law School graduate, which is not any better, with extensive experience in international business, major financial transactions, and negotiations. Prior to his time at Yale, he graduated from Duke University with a degree in political science, where he also contributed to the Duke Journal of Politics. His academic pursuits also led him to study at Oxford University and later serve as a visiting scholar at St. Petersburg Law School in Russia. For over 30 years, Howard has supported international corporations in navigating complex negotiations across Europe, North America, and Asia. As an attorney, he has provided legal counsel to companies such as MCorp Corporation and Purolite Corporation. Howard currently serves as co-president and general counsel for Brody Generational Capital Partners, where he leads investment and legal strategy. Howard's deep commitment to education extends to his philanthropy. He has donated to Yale Law School, where he also founded the Howard Wexler Brody 93 School of Jewish and Israeli Law, as well as to Brasenose College at Oxford University and the University of Pennsylvania. His extensive experience in international negotiations, his time teaching and learning overseas, and his ability to lead and manage complex cross-cultural environments make him a well-qualified candidate to represent the United States overseas. But what makes Howard particularly qualified to be U.S. Ambassador to Finland is his love for his country and for Finland, his devotion to putting the United States first, and his commitment to working with the President to foster international relations. Howard is the right candidate to serve as Ambassador to Finland, and I encourage my colleagues to support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Cruz. I know Senator Hagerty has some introductions too, and we'll give him the floor when he gets here. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and start with the nominees' statements. So we'll start with you, Mr. Hilberg. You have the floor for 5 minutes, give or take.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of this committee. It is the honor of a lifetime to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee for Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. I want to express my deep gratitude to President Trump and my friend Secretary Rubio for their trust and confidence. If confirmed, I will work every minute of every day to advance President Trump's economic security and diplomacy agenda on behalf of the country we all love. I also appreciate the time that the members and staff of this committee have spent with me. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with you. On a personal note, I would like to thank my husband, Keith, our 2 beautiful children, Anne and Eli, my mother, Edith, my stepfather, Michelle, and my late father, Ted, for their unending years of support. My grandfather was liberated by the U.S. military from Auschwitz and given a second chance at life. My grandparents were 32 years old when they moved here. They had no education and spoke no English, but they had an instinct for survival and a dream. I imagine my grandfather, dispossessed of his family in the Holocaust, coming home tired to the bone from his day job at a Jeep factory and his night shift as a hospital janitor. I imagine telling him his adoptive country would someday give his grandson the opportunity to appear before the United States Senate as a nominee for Undersecretary of State. If that isn't the American dream, I don't know what is. I share the top policy priority of winning our strategic competition with China, something that President Trump, you, Mr. Chairman, and many on this very committee have long championed. As an author, I have thought deeply about this issue and believe the relationship between Washington and Silicon Valley will directly shape the strength of America's military and the size of its economy. I launched the Hill and Valley Forum as a superhighway for bipartisan bicoastal partnership to solve our hardest national security challenges. It has been an honor to work with many of you on a bipartisan basis through the Hill and Valley Forum and my work on the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. My experiences in the tech industry as an investor, advisor, author, and co-founder of the Hill and Valley Forum have prepared me to deploy American industry as a diplomatic instrument to make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. They also instilled in me an indelible belief that economic security is national security, an idea President Trump introduced during his first term and one which will be the North Star of the E family if confirmed. The world economy is on the foothills of a new great divergence in the geography of global wealth, on a scale unseen since the first industrial revolution. Nations harnessing the power of new technologies like artificial intelligence are economically leaping ahead of others. The implications for America's safety and strength are significant. History teaches us that periods of rapid technological change can lead to major shifts in the global balance of power. The Trump administration is committed to making America the birthplace and leader of the fourth industrial revolution. If confirmed, the State Department's E-family will do its part to ensure America's economic and technological leadership is built on strong foundations. First and foremost, decades of globalization have left America's economy precariously reliant on a technology supply chain exposed to geopolitical adversaries and vulnerable to disruptions. These dependencies create unacceptable risks to U.S. economic security and long-term growth. If confirmed, I will work closely with the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation and other departments to build the rails of a secure technology supply chain anchored around flagship projects. This will be the State Department's overarching framework to answer President Trump's call and guide State Department policy on economic statecraft, promoting America's economic security and growth, and American technological dominance abroad. Second, if confirmed, I will work to position the United States as the industrial engine of the department's global supply chain strategy. I will do this by working with other departments, including the Departments of Commerce and Treasury, to help guide and accelerate the deployment of foreign investment commitments in infrastructure that will jolt American industrial productivity and competitiveness. Examples include advanced manufacturing like the TSMC expansion in Arizona, mineral extraction and processing like the lithium loop in Nevada, and large energy infrastructure projects like the Alaska LNG project. Third, if confirmed, I will implement President Trump's America First trade and investment policies and work with the U.S. Trade Representative and other departments to expand market access for American companies abroad and promote exports for American energy, particularly oil, liquefied natural gas, and nuclear energy. I will also advance a level playing field for U.S. companies and address unfair and predatory trade practices, particularly by China's state-backed global champions across third markets and the global south. Thank you all for the opportunity to appear before this distinguished committee. I welcome your questions, and if confirmed, I look forward to working with you and your staff to deliver a foreign policy that protects the interests of our nation and its people.
Thank you, Mr. Hilbert. Mr. Puster.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you as President Trump's nominee to be the United States Ambassador to the European Union. I'm immensely honored by the confidence President Trump and Secretary Rubio have placed in me. I'm also very grateful for the support of my wife of nearly 38 years, Deanna. She's here with me today, and I wouldn't be here today if not for her support. I'm also very grateful for the love and support of my 6 children, 3 of whom are here today, my daughter Vanessa and my sons Christian and John, and my 6 grandchildren, the oldest of whom is serving as we speak in the Pacific on the aircraft carrier Nimitz. Thank you for all the joy you bring to my life. Today I remember my parents who encouraged me to dream big and always said I could be whatever I wanted to be if I put in the work. I grew up in a working class home in Cleveland, Ohio, and became the first member of my family to graduate from college. My parents didn't have the money to help with my education, but thankfully I grew up in a country that provided a path for me to work my way through college and law school while supporting my young family. Our great country has given me tremendous opportunities, and if confirmed, I will give America my best. I would employ the principles that made me successful as an attorney and in business to make our nation safer, stronger, and more prosperous for the good of the American people. I consider it a particularly special honor that President Trump nominated me as ambassador to the EU, America's largest trading partner, and our nation's top counterterrorism partner for over the past 20 years. As Secretary Rubio said, America first does not mean America only. Our U.S.-EU relationship is incredibly consequential for American security and prosperity. In this respect, there are 3 lines of effort that I'd like to touch on today because they're critical to making the United States safer, stronger, and more prosperous. First, as President Trump has said, trade with the EU must be both fair and free to promote American prosperity. If confirmed, I'll work to ensure that transatlantic commerce serves the economic interests of the American people. The United States should be the EU's economic partner of choice in every sector. The U.S.-EU trade relationship holds immense potential, but as President Trump has made abundantly clear, this potential can only be unleashed if the EU market is more open to buying American goods and services. If confirmed, I'll work to expand U.S. exports from agricultural products to energy, automobiles, machinery, and defense equipment, with the latter being essential for expanded European defense capacity. President Trump's America First agenda is strengthening America's global leadership, and if confirmed, I will commit to protecting America's economic leadership in Europe. Second, I'll advocate for an EU market where American companies are free to thrive without excessive regulation, red tape, and taxes. For far too long, American companies have been unfairly targeted by EU regulators and penalized for their success, particularly American tech companies, which are the envy of the world, leading the way on innovation. When American companies are allowed to innovate and grow, they thrive, and the American people, as well as people across the globe, benefit and prosper. Third, global peace is essential for American safety and prosperity. Commerce prospers where peace abounds. This is why President Trump and Secretary Rubio are urging the EU to invest more in defense. Europe must be up to the task of defending itself. If confirmed, I'll advocate for a Europe that assumes a greater role in its defense, fostering peace and international security. In closing, I'm proof that the American dream is alive and well. My path to success was made possible only by the support of my family and the free market capitalism our great country offers. Free markets are the proven path to prosperity and have lifted billions of people out of extreme poverty across the globe over the past 200 years, including my family, which has deep roots across the European continent. During my time as CEO of CKE Restaurants, a position my Slovakian grandparents would never have imagined I could achieve, I saw firsthand the great talent and potential of the American workforce and how functioning free markets create jobs and opportunity while increasing wages for working-class Americans. America can further grow those opportunities if our transatlantic relationship advances America's interests. Thanks to President Trump's America First foreign policy, the United States is now positioned to enjoy an economic resurgence. Fair and robust transatlantic trade, bolstered by peace in Europe, will advance, preserve, and strengthen American prosperity and security. If confirmed, I'll bring the same determination I brought to my business career to the cause of ensuring that our transatlantic relationship works for the American people. I've heard very positive things about the staff of the EU Embassy in Brussels, and if confirmed, I look forward to meeting and working with every one of them. Thank you for the opportunity to share my American story with this esteemed committee. I look forward to taking your questions.
Mr. Putzer, you're going to find that position very interesting. Senator Hagerty, you wanted to say a couple things about some of the...
I did, Chairman Risch. Thank you for the opportunity to do
Sure.
that, and Ranking Member Shaheen. I appreciate that. I wanted to mention Specifically, two of the candidates, and I might make a remark or two about another as well, but both Andy Puzder and Jacob Hellberg are longtime friends of mine, and people I think they're just eminently qualified for the positions that they are being nominated for by President Trump. Mr. Puzder, of course, has been nominated by President Trump to be our ambassador to the European Union. And I'd like to first speak to his qualifications for this. Andy's a patriot whose highly accomplished career in business, law, and public policy makes him an excellent candidate for this ambassadorial role. Andy's widely recognized for his leadership as the former CEO of CKE Restaurants, that's the parent company of Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. During his tenure, he led the company through a significant turnaround, growing CKE's role as a major player in the global fast food industry. Under Andy's leadership, CKE expanded to over 3,800 restaurants across 48 states and 40 foreign countries. He had more than 115,000 employees worldwide. His experience navigating international markets and cross-border business challenges gives him practical, hands-on understanding of global commerce that will be an asset of particular relevance to a diplomatic post in Brussels that's so focused on transatlantic economic relations. Yet his qualifications extend well beyond the boardroom. Andy's a seasoned attorney, a published author, and a deeply respected voice in national debates over public policy. He's also been a vocal advocate for pro-growth economic policies, for regulatory reform, and for other efforts to strengthen American competitiveness in global markets, issues that are central to the ongoing relationship between the United States and the European Union. As the nominee to be U.S. ambassador to the EU, Andy brings with him not only decades of executive leadership, but also a clear understanding of how economic policy affects real people, businesses, and international relationships. At a time when transatlantic cooperation faces both opportunities and challenges, from trade and technology to security, Andy's experience and know-how will be critical to furthering ties between the United States and Europe in support of President Trump's agenda. Let me now turn to Jacob Hellberg, a nominee whose vision, intellect, and tenacity make him uniquely qualified for the role of Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and Environment. His nomination comes at a pivotal moment. From economic coercion to critical mineral choke points to energy issues and the weaponization of advanced technologies, the challenges posed by adversaries to our nation are urgent and they're complex. To meet these challenges, we need fierce advocates for American competitiveness, advocates like Jacob in the State Department. Over the years I've known Jacob, I've found that he's a true visionary with a rare ability to take big strategic ideas and turn them into meaningful action. I remember when Jacob came to my office shortly after being nominated, and I commented that his nomination was likely very unwelcome news in Beijing, and for a good reason. Jacob's ideas and publications have helped reframe how policymakers view China's predatory trade practices and the strategic dimensions of emerging technologies in AI, space, and robotics. Jacob is a public servant whose work as a commissioner on the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission has driven U.S. policy toward a safer and more prosperous future. And Jacob is an internationally recognized leader whose Hill and Valley Forum has become a preeminent venue for bringing Washington policymakers and Silicon Valley innovators together to address important economic and national security issues, the same issues that Jacob will tackle if he's confirmed as Undersecretary. At a time when authoritarian regimes like China exploit economic tools and emerging technologies in order to undermine our national interests, Jacob's nomination reflects the urgent need for strategic, tech-savvy leadership of U.S. foreign policy. Jacob will bring to the role of Undersecretary not only a profound understanding of the global economy, but also a powerful grasp of the digital battlegrounds where this century's great power competition is playing out right before our eyes. I've no doubt that Jacob will serve with integrity, focus, and a determination to strengthen America's hand on the world stage. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for this opportunity to introduce my friends Andy and Jacob this morning, and I'd also like to extend my regards to Ben Black. Ben's been nominated to lead the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. His expertise in investment and development will be instrumental in advancing our nation's global economic interest. We need these highly qualified leaders in the front lines of American diplomacy, and I want to urge my colleagues to support their nominations. And if it would be okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter my written remarks for the record.
Yep, they will be entered, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Senator Hagerty. We appreciate that. Mr. Kapoor, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to join you as President Trump's nominee for the position of Assistant Secretary for South and Central Asian Affairs. I appreciate the trust and the confidence that President Trump has placed in me by nominating me for this role. I'm also grateful for the unwavering support of my family and friends. A number of them sit behind me today, including my wife and 3 of my 5 children. Others I know join us in spirit, and I thank them all. Appearing before you, I can't help but feel that I've come full circle. I was born in New Delhi to an Indian father and an American mother. Although I visited India often during my childhood, I grew up in the United States as a thoroughly American kid, never imagining that my career would someday return me to the place where I was born. But I became interested in studying the region in graduate school and soon was working on it as a scholar and as a government official. In my scholarly capacity, I wrote books and articles about the region and its security environment, and also about US policy. In my official capacity, I taught military officers about the region, led US-India strategic engagement projects, and covered South and Central Asia in the State Department's policy planning staff. Now, if confirmed, I'll lead the State Department Bureau responsible for this critical part of the world. So appearing before you today really does make me feel like I've come back to my beginning. The United States' relationships with the countries of South and Central Asia hold great promise, and with effective policy, they can flourish and enable us to achieve Secretary Rubio's goal of making the United States safer, stronger, and more prosperous. Let me briefly speak about each of these relationships and their opportunities. I begin with our partnership with India. The United States and India share a host of common interests, ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific region, which is not dominated by China, expanding bilateral trade, building our economic relationships so that it is more symmetrical and more profitable, facilitating technology sharing and innovation and ensuring access to the energy necessary to fuel our economies. And if confirmed, I'll work to further advance US-India relations and put our partnership on course to realize its tremendous promise. On Pakistan, if confirmed, I'll pursue security cooperation where it is beneficial to US interests, while seeking opportunities for bilateral collaboration in trade and investment. South Asia recently avoided a costly conflict, with Vice President Vance and Secretary Rubio intensely engaged on the issue. If confirmed, I will continue to promote longstanding US security interests with India and Pakistan through the pursuit of peace and stability and the fight against terrorism. Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, and Bhutan are important for stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Sri Lanka and Maldives are located along major oceanic trade routes, while Bangladesh boasts the largest economy in the region after India. If confirmed, I will advocate for enhanced US cooperation with these countries to bolster our security, counterbalance China's influence, and expand trade. In Afghanistan, if confirmed, I will support President Trump and Secretary Rubio in bringing home wrongly detained Americans. I also will work to ensure that the country never again becomes a springboard for terrorism threatening the homeland. Finally, in Central Asia, the United States seeks to advance the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of regional states, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. If confirmed, I will leverage the C5+1 process as well as bilateral formats and pursue cooperation in areas including energy, critical minerals, counterterrorism, the fight against transnational crime, and the development of physical and digital infrastructure. The opportunities in South and Central Asia that I've just outlined hold tremendous promise. If confirmed, I will pursue them energetically to realize their potential, to enhance the safety, strength, and prosperity of the American people. I thank the chairman, the ranking member, and the committee for your time and the opportunity to appear before you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brody.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am honored and humbled by President Trump's nomination to serve as United States Ambassador to the Republic of Finland. I'd like to thank the President and the Secretary of State for their confidence and for entrusting me with advancing the 3 fundamental pillars of American foreign policy: strength, security, and prosperity. I also want to express my gratitude to this committee for its vital role in shaping and overseeing our foreign policy. I'd like to thank Senator Cruz for his generous introduction and support. It's often said that serving overseas is a family endeavor. In that spirit, I want to thank my wife, Jimena, a recent immigrant from Mexico and soon-to-be proud American, for her love and excitement about moving our family to Finland if I am confirmed. I'm also joined today by my parents, whose guidance and unwavering support have shaped my values. My father is a true example of the American dream. After losing his own father at a young age, he helped care for his family and, alongside his brother, founded a small business in his basement that grew into a successful multinational specialty chemical and life sciences company. My mother, the keeper of our family memories, recently reminded me that I once dreamed of a career in diplomacy. While my path led me first into international business law, this moment brings those early aspirations full circle. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania and attended Yale Law School. Over the past 3 decades, I have worked at the intersection of law, global investment, and business, most recently as co-president and general counsel of my family office. I've negotiated deals worldwide, studied at Oxford, and lived and studied in Russia from 1990 to 1992. During my time in Russia, I witnessed pivotal events: the Soviet crackdown in the Baltics, the August 1991 coup attempt, and ultimately the collapse of the Soviet Union. These experiences shaped my understanding of the region and the resilience of nations on Russia's periphery. Few understand those challenges better than Finland, sharing an 830-mile land border with Russia. Its recent accession to NATO reinforces collective defense and highlights Finland's role as a capable, reliable partner. Our bilateral defense cooperation agreement enhances readiness and ensures strategic access in the region. Finland's support for Ukraine and its investments in defense demonstrate a strong commitment to transatlantic security. As the United States advances its Arctic strategy and maintains freedom of navigation in the Arctic, Finland's geographic position and deep cold weather expertise make it an indispensable partner. As part of the Icebreaker Collaboration Effort, or ICEPACT, our two nations are engaging in working in workforce development and maritime innovation to revitalize U.S. shipbuilding and support American jobs. Finland's leadership in quantum computing and 5G and 6G are equally vital to countering strategic threats from China. Finland also plays a critical role in our economic relationship. It is one of the fastest growing sources of foreign direct investment in the United States. Finnish firms support tens of thousands of American jobs. Finland is also a key partner in securing the critical minerals needed for defense and high-tech manufacturing, bolstering the resilience of U.S. supply chains. All of this ties back to my 4 core priorities if confirmed. Protecting U.S. citizens in Finland as my highest priority, deepening our bilateral security ties and NATO cooperation, strengthening Arctic and maritime collaboration, and expanding technological and economic ties with Finland with the goal of reducing our trade debt. The Finnish national epic, the Kalevala, tells of the forging of the Sampo, a mythical object of prosperity created through innovation, effort, and resolve. In one passage it reads, "The smith, Ilmarinen, forged the Sampo with skill. On one side there's a corn mill, on the second a salt mill, a money mill on the third, and then the Sampo ground, one binful to eat, another to sell, and a third to store at home." Though the Sampo is mythical, it is an apt metaphor for the values we hold in common with our Finnish partners. The grain it mills symbolizes self-sufficiency, the belief that a nation should sustain itself through its own labor. The salt evokes trade and our shared commitment to it being fair and mutually beneficial. And the money represents national strength, the prosperity that enables us to defend freedom and invest in our future. I am eager to join the deeply experienced and capable team at Mission Helsinki. If confirmed, I will work to support their mission, morale, and safety every day. Thank you again for your consideration. I look forward to your questions, and if confirmed, to serving our country with honor and integrity in Helsinki.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black.
Thank you. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and members of the committee, thank you for having me here today and for the time you and your staffs have spent with me in anticipation of this hearing. congratulations as well to my fellow panelists. Senator Cotton, thank you for your incredibly gracious introduction and your friendship over the many years. And Senator Haggerty, thank you very much for your kind words and endorsement. This committee's insights and judgments are critical to serving all Americans' interests by executing foreign policy objectives through strategic and economic development investing. I'm honored to be nominated by President Trump to be the Chief Executive Officer of the United States International Development Finance Corporation, and am forever grateful for his trust and faith in me. My wife, Charlotte, is here with me today. I want to thank her for her endless love, support, and encouragement. I aim to make her and our young son, Rafe, proud every day. Charlotte's father, Temple, is also the mayor of a small town in Illinois called Old Mill Creek, and Charlotte has incredible patience with civic duty and political process. My parents, Leon and Deborah, are also here today amongst other family members, and I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. They are wonderful parents who have always instilled in my siblings and I the importance of family. Finally, I'd be remiss as an uncle on this day if I didn't wish a very happy birthday to my twin nephews, Nate and Charlie. Throughout this confirmation process, I've relied on the input, guidance, and support of the current acting as well as the former leadership of both the DFC and its predecessor, OPIC. I'm deeply grateful to Scott Nathan, Adam Bowler, Ray Washburn, and Rob Mossbacher Jr. I appreciate their support for my nomination and the agency. I also want to thank the fantastic group of hardworking professionals at the DFC, its interagency partners, and the leadership at the Departments of State, Commerce, and Treasury, with whom I have met in preparation for this confirmation process. This is an exciting and important time for the DFC. I believe the agency is positioned to achieve great things on behalf of the American people. The DFC was created with bipartisan support and a consensus that it could be an effective tool of U.S. foreign policy. The DFC can be a catalyst for bringing private capital to worthy projects that serve the United States' strategic foreign policy objectives. It can promote economic development in allied and potential ally nations. The creation of the DFC through the BUILD Act of 2018 codified the DFC's dual mandate of both economic development and strategic foreign policy priorities, provided an enhanced investing toolkit, and expanded the scope of investment targets. Implicitly and explicitly, Congress has challenged the DFC to make a greater impact and to serve as a substantive economic counterweight to China and its Belt and Road Initiative and other global strategic competitors. From the Revolutionary War to the Cold War, the United States and the American people always rise to a challenge. If confirmed, I aim to help the DFC rise to this challenge of China and the Belt and Road Initiative. My consultations with members of this committee and staff have been very valuable and informative. If confirmed, I look forward to working with Congress to shape and to continue to grow DFC's capabilities and capacity so that it can properly fulfill the responsibilities it has been given. The challenges facing our nation and the world today can seem overwhelming, but the opportunity for the DFC to be part of meaningful solutions that move the needle is enormous. If confirmed, I will draw on my nearly 2 decades of investment, managerial, and legal experience to help the DFC pursue this mission. I will dedicate myself to making sure the agency has the right strategy, resources, structure, and processes to efficiently and effectively source, analyze, and underwrite investment opportunities. And just as importantly, after deployment, to properly and continually measure and monitor portfolio investments. If confirmed, I will do my utmost to integrate and partner with private sector capital providers and investors to effectively scale deployment, increase opportunities for American companies and workers, and help the DFC become a best-in-class financial institution and resource for the United States. There's one final person I'd like to thank today, and that's my grandfather, Ira Ressler. He served as a technical sergeant and rear gunner in the Army Air Corps in the Aleutian Islands during World War II, and afterwards attended college and law school on the GI Bill. His service and patriotism inspired my lifelong dream to serve my country and pursue public service. He was and always will be my hero. And though he passed away 25 years ago, his lessons, moral character, and ethics remain deeply engraved on my consciousness. I am deeply proud to be an American, and it would be the honor of a lifetime to serve my fellow citizens and further the interests of the United States of America. Thank you for considering my nomination. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black. We're now going to do a round of 5-minute questions for members who are here. I'm going to start with myself. Mr. Brody, Finland is a great example of what can happen on this planet. About 3 weeks before the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, my wife and I had the honor of having dinner with the Finnish ambassador at his home, and I had been a longtime advocate for they and Sweden becoming members of NATO. We had a robust discussion, as we usually do. He underscored to me that 70% of Finnish people really wanted to stay neutral. They had a national policy of neutrality, which they said worked out very well for them. And interestingly enough, they are very prepared, even though they're neutral. There's very few countries, I think, as prepared as they are to take an invasion, because it's an all-in with all their citizens. But in any event, we had a nice discussion about it, but he said, nah, they really felt neutral. So about 3 weeks later, which was about a week later, it was after the invasion, I ran into him at another reception. I came across him and said, how's that neutrality thing working? He says, we're in. We're all in. So in that short period of time, they changed dramatically. Then I had the good fortune of being able to visit them last year. And they're a great partner. I mean, as quickly as they came on, as you know, we struggled with one of our so-called allies in NATO, 2 of them, as a matter of fact, to get them in. But we got the job done, and I think you're going to find them really all in. So best wishes there, and I think you're going to find that a not particularly heavy lift, convincing them that looking west rather than east is the way to go. Mr. Puzder, at the EU, what you're going to find is Europeans that are very nervous, which I'm sure you already know. And we spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time trying to convince them that we are a partner. We're a reliable partner, and we're all in. We have had an argument over defense spending, and as you know, in NATO, all of us agreed, and it was unanimous agreement that we'd spend 2%. And until President Trump took office, only 3 countries had met that 3%. And President Trump, as you know, has a way of speaking directly. And he spoke directly, and the Europeans heard him, and they were offended a bit because his sensibilities aren't the same level as theirs are. But they started writing checks, and now we're into the 20s of the 32 members of NATO. So I hope you'll be able to talk with them about defense spending and convince them that it's got nothing to do with our relationship as much as it does them meeting their obligations. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's essential. Thank you very much, Senator, for that question, and I agree with you 100%. I think it's essential, as the President has stated, that the Europeans be able to defend the European continent. And I was reading Secretary General of NATO's comments yesterday about the need for NATO to step up and be able to defend itself with American help. They talked about America not withdrawing troops, but NATO members needing to step up to now a 5% commitment, which many have stepped up to, I believe, including Finland recently. And as of yesterday, even Canada agreed that it was going to meet its commitment to do 2% 5 years sooner than it had previously committed to do. So I'm obviously as a citizen, I'm not read in on the intricacies of what's going on in the European Union with respect, or in NATO, with respect to defense spending. But I think there is a realization in NATO that they do need to step it up, that the United States has commitments, particularly in the Pacific, that are going to be drawing on our resources. I was reading one One member of parliament stating that a country with, a country with 450 million people shouldn't be depending on a country with 340 million people to defend it against a country with 140 million people that can't beat a country with 38 million people. So I think there is a realization there that they need to step it up. What I've heard in speaking with people over there is that there is a hope that somebody who actually knows the president and can speak with him comes over there and gives them a direct line. And I think that's one of the advantages I'll have being in the European Union, and I think that'll give me some credibility.
Well, thank you. Although you say you're not read in on this spending, you're going to get read in pretty quick on it.
Yes.
And it's a matter that is discussed regularly every time we meet with them. And it can be a robust discussion, but they are coming around. The momentum is the way you just described, and that is, at first they were quite reluctant. We got a little help from Putin, I'll admit that, but now they understand what way this has to go. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start with you, Mr. Helberg, because I noticed in your opening comments that you talked about the importance of supporting fossil fuels and LNG, but you didn't mention clean energy jobs, which I found interesting because in my state of New Hampshire, the clean energy jobs are growing faster than the fossil fuel jobs since we don't really have any fossil fuel in the state. And while I don't think we can move immediately to alternative sources of energy, I do think it's an important part of our energy mix, and that continued over-reliance on fossil fuels is not in the long-term interest of the country. And certainly China has recognized that as they're looking at their energy mix in the future. So, but I want to ask you about the reorganization at the State Department, because under the reorganization plan, at least 3 offices, including global health security and diplomacy, cyberspace, and digital policy, will report to you. So can you talk about how you can ensure that the reorganization is effective and maintains the State Department expertise in each of those areas as part of the e-Bureau?
Thank you, Senator. As a private citizen, I'm not read into the full programmatic details of where budgets have been cut and personnel that's is planned on being riffed. With that being said, the Secretary made clear in his Senate testimony recently that the goal of the current reorganization that is in the works is to bring the State Department's mission closer to its original roots, to bring the State Department back to the center of American foreign policy making. Various accumulations of bureaucratic processes has caused the State Department to increasingly become marginalized in the foreign policy making process over the years.
Well, I'm not asking you to comment on specific staffing issues. I'm just asking you to tell me how you think about the e-Bureau and how you would see absorbing those other areas that are not directly related to what has been the long-term mission of the Bureau.
So my understanding is that the North Star of the e-Bureau moving forward will be economic security and economic statecraft, and therefore energy and technology will very much be a part of that. It's hard for me to comment exactly on the different moving parts of the Bureau simply because I haven't seen definitive org charts for what the new shape of the reorg looks like. But ultimately, my job is a job that will be focused on implementing the president's agenda, and therefore, based on where they land with the current state of the org chart, we will go ahead and execute the president's policy to pursue economic statecraft and use economics as a tool to advance security interests for the country.
Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. You have taught at the Naval Postgraduate School, so you appreciate how our men and women in uniform view the allies on the ground who fight with them. And again, I was interested in your opening comment that when you talked about Afghanistan, You talked about wrongfully detained, which I think we would all agree we need to bring home anybody wrongfully detained. But you didn't address the Afghans in the United States, the SIV holders, the people who risked their lives, and many people still are risking their lives and their families' lives who are in Afghanistan because of the Taliban rule. So can you talk about how you will address that if you're confirmed, and whether you will advocate to keep those Afghans who supported our men and women in the military during that fight in the United States so that they will not be sent back to the Taliban?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I have not been privy to the logic and the balancing of equities behind the review of the Afghan relocation program, and I think.
Well, let me just ask though: do you think Afghanistan now is a safe country to return to, for those who fought with the United States?
Senator, I don't know whether it's how safe it is. I mean, I think
Dr. Kapoor, you have taught at Stanford, you have taught in college, you've taught at the Naval Postgraduate School. It's hard for me to believe that you think that Afghanistan is a safe country for us to send Afghans who helped the United States back to, given all of the public reporting about the Taliban and the people who have been killed who fought with the United States.
Senator, again, I don't know what the logic was behind the review and the change in some of the subcomponents of the Afghan relocation program. I know that some of those subcomponents remain in effect. Some of them have been changed, and some of them have been canceled. When and if I'm confirmed, it's something that I'll become more familiar with. But at this point, I don't know what the thinking was behind the change in policy.
Well, I certainly hope that you will continue to advocate for those people who helped us during the war in Afghanistan. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Ricketts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, thank you all for your interest in serving our country, and for your families who will also serve along with you as you work on their behalf. And Mr. Black, you should tell Charlotte's dad that being a small town mayor is probably the toughest job in politics. I think Senator Shaheen would agree, having been a governor, that it's tougher than being a senator or a governor because your neighbors are not shy about sharing with you how you're damaging their quality of life by the decisions you make and so forth. So it's a tough job, so tell him we appreciate his service there. Last month, I hosted a bipartisan tabletop exercise with Senator Kuhn simulating a communist Chinese energy quarantine of Taiwan. And that exercise confirmed one of Taiwan's biggest vulnerabilities, which is, in such a conflict scenario, which is energy insecurity. But it's not just about Taiwan. This is something that applies to all of our allies in the region who are nearly just as vulnerable to relying heavily on seaborne energy imports in such a crisis. Beijing could leverage that dependence to be able to drive a wedge between us and our allies if that were to come to pass. Meanwhile, Communist China is rapidly growing its own energy independence. 2024, it had the largest expansion of coal power in its history. It's also adding on solar, wind, and nuclear, all the while building a naval capacity to be able to interdict and threaten critical energy supply lines. The most immediate answer to this problem is for us to increase our exports of LNG. We are the world's top exporter with clean, reliable gas that's already helping our allies replace coal and cut emissions and harden their energy resilience. However, we've seen firsthand Washington's regulatory paralysis, especially during the Biden administration with his pause on LNG, and what that can do to erode confidence in the United States as a dependable partner. Mr. Helberg, as Undersecretary for Energy and Environment, what will you do to ensure that the U.S. is a strategically reliable partner when it comes to energy for our Indo-Pacific allies?
Senator, thank you for the question, and thank you for taking the time to meet with me in the Senate. Energy will be a critical part of the strategy to secure our supply chains. The United States is very fortunate to actually be a net exporter of energy. The United States currently is the largest exporter of crude oil. It is the largest exporter of natural gas in the world. A number of our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific are net importers. India has immense energy needs and is a net importer of energy. Japan is a net importer of energy and has substantial energy needs. The energy needs of these countries is projected to go up substantially as a lot of these countries look to ramp up their activities in cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence, which, as you know, require large computing clusters, which are very energy-intensive. And therefore, I think there is a substantial opportunity for the United States to increase energy exports to a lot of these partners. I think doing this would make the world substantially safer because it would help these countries, particularly India, move away from its energy imports from Russia, which has been the main engine of financing for its war in Eastern Europe. And ultimately, I believe the president's executive order on nuclear energy will allow substantially increasing our domestic electricity generation from nuclear energy, which currently stands at 20%. Bringing that number up will allow up freeing excess capacity for natural gas, which we can use to export to allies around the world.
Given the threat of the Communist China's imposition of a blockade or energy embargo, what steps will your bureau take to ensure Taiwan's energy lifeline remains open during a crisis?
Senator, the issues surrounding the physical security and integrity of freedom of navigation, I believe it will be primarily a military issue. Obviously, which will, if confirmed, be outside of my purview. Obviously, from an economic policy standpoint, China has a very extensive illicit maritime fishing flotilla that it operates across the Pacific, which is obviously believed to be convertible for military means in a time of war. The United States is, based on what I understand, tracking that issue very closely. Ultimately, the economic integration between Taiwan and the United States will be a substantial factor in security-related decisions on whether and how to support Taiwan in the event of a conflict. Taiwan is already the 10th largest trading partner of the United States. TSMC has committed to investing $100 billion in Arizona in advanced semiconductor manufacturing. So I believe bringing the two countries closer together will be key in driving a lot of the security considerations around freedom of navigation around the Taiwan Strait.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Helberg, I think that one of the opportunities you'll have is looking at Taiwan's current energy situation. They've got a nuclear power plant that they're thinking about shutting down. That'd be an opportunity for us to help them keep that open. So as you talk about nuclear, also being able to have more energy stored on site would be another thing that would help them mitigate an energy quarantine. So I think those are some of the things you can take a look at. They're not directly military related, but maybe within your purview. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senators. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and just a comment. I share many of Senator Ricketts' priorities and concerns and look forward to working with you on them. We jointly went to Taiwan a number of weeks ago, and the energy security concerns, I think, are broadly shared. If I could, to both Mr. Black and Mr. Helberg, congratulations on your nominations. My thanks to your wife, Charlotte, who I hope will enjoy an anniversary once this confirmation is over, and to your husband, Keith, and your family. If I could just speak to you first, Mr. Black, about the reauthorization of the DFC. As a co-author of the BUILD Act and someone who has strongly supported the DFC, I welcomed our constructive conversation. I look forward to working with Chairman Risch and Ranking Member Shaheen on timely reauthorization. I hope the administration will share reauthorization priorities promptly, because we have to pass this before October, or it will hold up significant deal flow, impacting the reputation of the DFC and have a chilling effect on our private sector partners. A few just quick questions. Mr. Black, if confirmed, do you commit to timely and consistent consultation with Congress in the run-up to DFC reauthorization to ensure it meets its objectives?
Senator, if confirmed, thank you. would absolutely look forward to working with Congress on the reauthorization.
And do you commit to continuing the DFC's dual strategic development mandate by continuing investments in programs that support development objectives, including, for example, healthcare and agribusiness?
Senator, thank you. As we discussed, I have said consistently that I feel the dual mandate is not in conflict. Development is very much strategic and has been from the earliest development projects inside the United States.
I appreciate that and look forward to working with you on it. And what's your view on the equity fix and whether or not it could be a critical part of expanding the scope of the DFC's reach?
So, Senator, as we discussed, as currently authorized under the BUILD Act, the DFC has a $60 billion statutory budget. At most conservative estimate, likely larger, China's Belt and Road has spent $1.5 trillion, if not, and most likely more. No matter what the reauthorization is, the number for the DFC will be smaller than that, and it should be, because the beauty of the DFC and the United States system is not going into countries, not even...
Mr. Black, would you agree that an equity fix might help expand the scope of the DFC's work?
Being able to take equity risk would be instrumental to working with the private sector and creating good capital structures.
Last point that we discussed, the New York office provides greater access to the markets and to private sector partners. Will you commit to maintaining a ratio that includes career folks in a significant percentage as opposed to political folks in the New York office?
Senator, thank you. As you know from our conversation, I'm not in the building yet. We were with my chief of staff, who has been speaking with that. And if confirmed, I think it's absolutely crucial that careers get exposure to New York finance firms and be able to work consistently with them so that careers in the DFC going forward are constantly on the radar and in conversation with the financial
I think it's important to keep that balance. If I might, both Mr. Helberg and Mr. Black. Mr. Black, you spoke about your grandfather as your hero, and a key part of why you admire him is his integrity. As someone who worked in global business for an American manufacturing firm, I think that our reputation as a nation committed to integrity in business dealings and our refusal to engage in practices comparable to our key adversaries, in particular the PRC, where they use bribery as a tool of economic advantage and we refuse to, it makes things like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act having clear guardrails really important. You both currently work in industries with significant overlap with the responsibilities of the positions to which you've been nominated. If confirmed, will you both commit to sustaining robust due diligence practices to ensure economic engagement remains honest, to recusing yourselves from any deals or matters or agreements with potential for conflicts of interest, and to upholding the FCPA? If you might, Mr. Blank.
Senator, thank you. If confirmed, I fully commit to leading the DFC, following all strictures of the law, as well as my ethics agreement and processes enforced and oversight by DFC's ethics lawyers.
Mr. Black, currently there's no Inspector General at the DFC. Do you recognize the central role that independent Inspectors General play in every federal agency?
Senator, I am not as familiar with the workings of Inspectors General and how the processes work from agency to agency. If confirmed, I will look into and look forward to working with Congress at looking at...
I'll tell you that Inspectors General in every agency play a critical role in maintaining an independent review of the processes and conduct. They also help identify inefficiency and often help improve operations. Mr. Helberg, your comment about sustaining due diligence guardrails, making sure that there's neither an actual or appeared conflict of interest in your very important work running the E family within state.
Senator, thank you, and I appreciated the time meeting with your staff, and I share your sentiment on the importance of maintaining high integrity and ethics standards. If confirmed, I will work, my ethics agreement lays out a process by which I will work with state ethics attorneys to ensure, in close consultation, to ensure that all clauses in my ethics agreement and statutes passed by Congress are complied with.
Thank you, Mr. Helberg. Two quick last questions. You'll be responsible for overseeing the State Department's implementation of sanctions. One of our primary sanctions targets is Russia, and it's critical to pushing Putin to the table. And frankly, we haven't seen the active ongoing work to prevent sanctions avoidance using shell companies and elsewise. Will you commit to fully enforcing sanctions on Russia consistent with U.S. policy?
Senator, my knowledge of the internal decision-making process of the State Department is limited as a private citizen. However, my understanding of current U.S. policy is the maintaining of sanctions on Russia while the president is pursuing active negotiations in the pursuit of a lasting peace in Eastern Europe. If confirmed, I will absolutely ensure that the sanctions that are currently in place have the highest levels of enforceability, and will use the Sanctions Office to coordinate with allies to make sure that sanctions are enforced.
Thank you, Mr. Helberg. Senator Graham and I have worked hard to help create two public-private foundations to address both food security and conservation and the use by terrorist organizations of ungoverned spaces. I look forward to working with you on both of these initiatives. Is that something you'll commit to me that we'll be able to do together?
Senator, I've very much enjoyed over the years working with industrious members of the Senate. Members of your staff have briefed me on the U.S. Foundation for International Conservation, which seems like a very important bill. And if the Congress passes the statute and it goes into full effect,
it has been signed into law.
I will fully commit to working with you to make sure that the law is applied.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your great. I have questions for the other members. I apologize for not getting to them, and I apologize to my colleague for going over my time.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Chair Risch. I appreciate you holding this hearing. I want to thank our witnesses for testifying here today. We have just a few minutes, so let's get at it. I want to talk about women and girls. We consistently hear that one of the biggest and most important differences between U.S. foreign assistance and that of the People's Republic of China is the U.S. commitment to investing in entire societies, including women and girls. They are the backbone of families and stability in many of these nations. So, Mr. Black, will you commit that, if confirmed, you will direct DFC to continue its support to women and girls, including their economic empowerment and stabilizing role in maintaining peace and security?
Senator, thank you for your question. As you know, under the BUILD Act, there are a number of different preferences that the DFC is to keep in mind for investments. One of them is for women. If confirmed, I commit to following all the strictures of the BUILD Act and the reauthorization.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about Abraham Accords, because over the past 5 years, the Abraham Accords have produced tangible results. It's improved regional security. It's been expanding economic opportunity and creating people-to-people ties that make peace achievable and lasting between Israel and its Arab partners. While Hamas's brutal October 7th attack paused this progress, I am hopeful we will be able to see new countries join the Abraham Accords in the near future, including those outside the Middle East and North Africa. So, Mr. Kapoor, what do you think of the possibility of Central Asian countries joining the Abraham Accords? And will you commit that, if confirmed, you will work with me to explore this idea further? Excuse me, Dr. Kapoor.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. It's certainly something that I would consider, and I would look forward to discussing with you if I were confirmed. I don't know what the various countries would think about that or what they would have to say about it, but it's something that I would be interested in discussing further with you and perhaps pursuing.
I can tell you, I think that they will welcome strengthening the Abraham Accords, economic ties and opportunities for peer-to-peer exchange in so many different areas. We'll look forward to working with you on that. I want to move now to the European Union and tariffs, because in recent years, Nevada has imported over $2 billion in goods per year from the EU. It's also exported close to $2.5 billion in goods to the EU per year. President Trump has threatened to place a 50% tariff on all imported goods from the EU, and the EU announced it is prepared to impose retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. This is going to place a heavy burden on Nevada families and businesses, especially small business and family-owned businesses. We're talking over $2 billion. So, Mr. Pudzer, if confirmed, how will you navigate this issue and ensure that my Nevada families, my Nevada businesses do not face financial hardship as a result of a potential trade war between the U.S. and EU countries, not to mention every state, I'm sure?
Thank you, Senator. That's a great and very timely question. As you know, President Trump, one of his outreach issues, part of the reason for that was his commitment to reset our international trade relationships so they no longer were America last, were over generous to our competitors and threatened our national security. So tariffs are a part of that, but I do have to say we are in negotiations now, Representative Greer. And again, I only know this.
I know, but it's over a $2.5 billion hit to Nevada, and we're only a state of 3 million people. That's a pretty big hit, sir, so we need to discuss this.
Right, I'm not read into what's going on in the negotiations, but Trade Representative Greer just came out with very positive comments about the progress they're making. I know the EU wants an agreement. I know the United States wants an agreement. So actually there's an article in the Wall Street Journal just yesterday.
Well, my Nevada businesses can't wait, and they're going to suffer now. And so we'll move on because I want to get my last. I see Senator Barrasso's here, and I just want to ask about critical and emerging technology. The PRC is vying to replace the United States' technological edge in a number of critical spheres. We know this: AI, biotechnology, quantum computing. This cannot happen. As U.S. leadership in critical and emerging tech, I believe, is key to maintaining economic security, maintaining deterrence, and bolstering stability in the Pacific. So, Mr. Hellberg, if confirmed, how will you work to ensure the U.S. maintains its qualitative edge across the spectrum of critical and emerging technologies? I have a lot of questions for you, but my time's out. We'll just start with this one.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you for taking the time to meet. We have one of the best innovation ecosystems in the world. The foundations of that ecosystem are currently sitting on top of very brittle supply chains. It's one of our biggest weaknesses. China's export controls on rare earth minerals is currently constraining the global automobile industry along with many various other industries. I believe that efforts that the U.S. government undertakes to secure our supply chains will not only help create job opportunities in the United States, including in Nevada with the lithium loop, but will also help ensure America's technological leadership, because it'll ensure that our technological champions have all of the resources that they need in order to innovate and expand capacity in the U.S., expanding data center compute capacity, as well as access to cutting-edge chips.
Thank you. We're very proud of our Nevada lithium loop and hope to expand that further. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Barrasso.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. A couple of quick questions. Mr. Black, congratulations. Well, congratulations to all of you. I want to talk about the core mission of the organization to which you've been nominated. Because over the last several years, the scope of the U.S. Development Finance Corporation has significantly evolved. Initially it was designed as a tool for development, and the goal was to support U.S. strategic foreign policy interests around the world. Eventually it was refocused to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. It has since focused on a wide range of areas, including infrastructure, critical minerals, climate, renewable energy, food security, vaccines. More recently, there's even been a shift towards domestic investments. Could you just talk about the core mission of the DFC and the impact?
Senator, thank you for your question. If we rewind back, earlier I spoke about the BUILD Act's dual mandate for the DFC, and that is both for development finance as well as strategic foreign policy interests. And the preamble and authorizing components really were focused by Congress on the Belt and Road Challenge here. Now, I know some of your previous skepticism here. Part of this is effectively to engage private markets to invest strategically. Actually not dissimilar going back to the more effective foreign policy, economic statecraft initiatives of the United States, going as far back as the Marshall Plan. The key thing to think about is the DFC should never be crowding out private capital. So I spoke earlier with Senator Coons about the concept of risk and equity, and if confirmed, that would be a highly important thing to engaging the private sector. An example I would give you is the DFC is supposed to be return focused, not necessarily risk adjusted return focused. So if one believes in efficient markets, the private sector will build these ports, terminals, and so forth, if it pencils properly for them. However, there can be deals where a lot of the capital stack pencils, but equity risk for a port overseas in the Philippines or the Cook Islands, may only pencil to a 10% equity return. It doesn't change the returns across the top of the capital structure where private capital would want to play. And in so doing, if the DFC engaged at the bottom of the capital stack, you can induce both private capital and achieve strategic interests.
Thanks. So, Mr. Helberg, following up on this China and global issues, it's estimated in 2025 global investments in energy are going to hit a record over $3 trillion, and the reports are that China is on track to spend almost as much on energy as the European Union and the United States combined. So with rising competition from China, what we're talking about AI, what the needs are, data centers, and all of those sorts of things, I think we need to stay ahead as a global energy leader. So in your opinion, what role does the State Department have in supporting American oil, natural gas, and coal producers in the face of growing international competitors?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think you hit the nail on the head with respect to the importance of energy. One can draw a straight line between total energy supply and economic growth throughout most of human history. Our total electricity supply has stagnated since roughly the year 2008. That will ultimately not be sustainable if, as a country, we set goals of expanding manufacturing capacity and expanding computing capacity in the United States. We will need substantially more energy. I believe we have the opportunity to do that through President Trump's all-of-the-above approach to energy. His executive order on expanding nuclear energy capacity in the United States opens opportunities to substantially increase electricity production. The expansion of natural gas exploitations also further add to that effort. Ultimately, I believe the State Department has an opportunity to both stimulate domestic demand for American-made energy by finding foreign markets and expanding market access for American energy overseas on the one hand. And on the other hand, I also believe the State Department has an opportunity to help facilitate and accelerate the deployment of foreign investment into the United States into large infrastructure projects like the LNG Alaska project, which, as you know, currently includes a large number of foreign investors, including Japan, which is obviously eyeing to potentially be a major consumer of that project.
Final question, Mr. Puzzler. If I could just visit with you about EU and China. It seems to me, just watching the news, and I know you've not been confirmed yet, but you've been clearly watching this, the EU's stance on China tends to vary. At least that's how I've been reading it. Several EU member states have aligned with the United States, share our concerns regarding China's growing influence and its record on human rights. Others seem to be more cautious of tensions and prefer to cooperate with China. Kind of just ask your assessment of the relationship right now between the EU and China.
There was a meeting just recently in China last week. This is obviously a very timely and good question. The trade representative from the European Commission, Maro Sefcovic, made some comments to the Chinese about the trade relationship that they had. It sounded very similar to comments that Americans have made, that we need fair and reciprocal trade, that we need regulatory transparency, that we need intellectual property protection, the kinds of things that I think the United States is looking for. I believe that we are the preferred trade partner for Europe. I don't believe they want to make China their preferred partner. They're seeing that retail market diminish as China's economy has declined, which is a problem for them. So I think while they're speaking with the Chinese, I think we're in a superior position with respect to the potential for a trade deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Senator, and congratulations to all of you on your nominations. Dr. Kapoor, I had good discussions with the Indian and Pakistani parliamentary delegations that were in Washington last week in the aftermath of the India-Pakistan crisis. As you know, President Trump and Secretary Rubio have taken credit for bringing about the ceasefire. As you probably already know, the Indian government has denied that the ceasefire resulted from American mediation. But regardless, there's a fragile ceasefire in place. Secretary Rubio said this on May 10th, and I'm quoting, "I am pleased to announce the governments of India and Pakistan have agreed to an immediate ceasefire and to start talks on a broad set of issues at a neutral site," unquote. So, Dr. Kapoor, if you are confirmed, what broad set of issues will you push India and Pakistan to discuss?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. So I'm not familiar with exactly what issues the Secretary had in mind when he talked about that. I think that as somebody from the outside looking in, it looked to me as if the administration and senior leadership in the administration, the Secretary, the Vice President, were actively involved in using their good offices to encourage de-escalation in the crisis. And I think that probably had a salutary effect. In the end, India and Pakistan have to decide for themselves, and did in this case too, decided for themselves to de-escalate, and that will be the case.
If I could, just because, you know, again, you'll be the Assistant Secretary if confirmed, and I'm just quoting what the Secretary of State, your boss, said. He said that they would agree. They'd agreed to start talks on a broad set of issues, and you're saying you don't have any idea what the Secretary was talking about with respect to broad sets of issues.
I don't know the issues that he had in mind. I wasn't part of the government at that time, so I wasn't privy to those discussions.
Okay. Well, broad does imply, does it not, sort of a comprehensive range of issues between the two countries?
It could.
It seems it would. I'm just curious about where that is going. I have raised in the last couple of years concerns about, you know, Pakistan's backsliding on democracy, also concerns about issues of crackdown on freedom of speech in India and Pakistan, and I will submit some questions for you to the record for you on those points. So,
thank you,
Mr. Puzder. I want to really pick up on Senator Barrasso's questions. Because during the first administration, many of us worked with the administration to urge our European partners to de-risk their relationship with China, their economic relationship. We spent a lot of time urging them not to adopt Huawei technology and other issues, and that actually was continued, that policy, during the Biden administration. But during this Trump administration, since the president called for, quote, Liberation Day tariffs, we've seen our European partners obviously express great concerns. And, you know, President von der Leyen, who was one of those who'd been advocating for de-risking from China, has talked about expanding trade and investment ties to China. She said not that long ago to her European colleagues, quote, "I know many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us." So my question to you is pretty straightforward. How do we convince our European partners to de-risk their economies from China when we are putting their economies at risk through our trade, our tariff, and other policies? How do we tell them, don't deal with China, but we're going to whack you with all these tariffs?
Thank you, Senator. Again, as a follow-up to Senator Barrasso's question, that's very timely. The most important thing we need to do is reach a trade agreement with the European Union. And I know we are aggressively pursuing reaching that agreement. While we're pursuing those negotiations, both sides are going to say things. We'll see what comes out in the final wash. But I know from comments, and really only from things I've read, because again, I'm a citizen, I'm not read in on any of this, But reading what Trade Representative Greer's had to say and also reading what President von der Leyen has been saying, and again, Trade Rep Maroš Šefčovič, there's great interest in reaching an agreement with the United States. There's very concerns, there's bribery allegations with respect to China in Europe. There's concerns with their trade practices. There are concerns with dumping of products in Europe. So I believe that we can work out an agreement with the European Union. I think it's in their interest and our interest, and I think they're pursuing it aggressively.
Well, thank you. And Senator, just in closing, I was quoting from the President of the EU, and she also said, quote, "Our message is clear. Europe is reliable, predictable, and open for fair business," unquote, meaning they will happily do business with anyone in the world, including very much China. And clearly when she said they're reliable and predictable to the rest of the world, the message was the United States is not reliable and predictable. So you got a lot of work to do if you're confirmed. And I think that unfortunately the Trump administration to date has made your job much harder. Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Senator Scott.
Sure. Well, first off, congratulations to each of you. I think this is an exciting time. You're gonna work for a president that's gonna put America first. He's gonna succeed peace through strength. So we're gonna be respected again. So I think you're gonna be serving at a historic time. Mr. Helberg, you're often at the forefront of cutting-edge technology and understanding its implications on our national security here at home. Given your background, I think you'll make a great addition to the State Department. As you prepare for the job, what would you say is the biggest threat the United States or allies face? Specifically, which countries and what risks do these countries pose?
Thank you very much, Senator, and thank you for taking the time to meet and lead up to this hearing. The biggest economic security threat to our country is, without any hesitation, our industrial over-reliance on communist China. They are currently instating export controls of rare earth magnets on Europe and the United States, which is already taking a toll on the global automobile industry, as well as other industries. As someone who worked in the private sector, I know that private companies are often very reluctant to come out publicly saying when they are negatively impacted by these types of policy decisions because they're afraid of bad PR, but these types of policy decisions really do sting. We are 90% reliant on Taiwan for semiconductors, 90% reliant on China for rare earth minerals, 70% reliant on China for cell phones, tablets, and drone production. That is not sustainable. And therefore, the E family will be entirely committed to developing a whole-of-government approach to securing our supply chains, and that will ultimately be the overarching policy framework through which we will engage with our partners and allies overseas.
Thank you. Mr. Positor, while I wish the European Union well, it's become increasingly apparent that it's a broken system and compensates for its struggles to create wealth and prosperity with redistribution and over-regulations. It's a large reason the United States managed to have a much better relationship with individual countries over the European Union headquarters. Given your expertise in the private sector with economic growth, what do you think about the EU strategy and how should this shape our relationship with the EU going forward?
Thank you, Senator. Great question. I think as President Trump has made clear, the European Union needs to walk back its overregulation, its red tape, its retaliatory taxes that damage American companies. So there's a lot of work to be done, but the Europeans know that. There's a Draghi report, who's the former Prime Minister of Italy, that came out and said that, in fact, overregulation is killing competitiveness. It's killing the economy in the European Union. In fact, their GDP was slightly larger than that of the United States back in 2008. It's already, and that was including the UK, who was a member of the EU back then. Including the UK today, they're 30% lower than we are. Take the UK out, they're 50% lower than we are today. So they need to make changes, and they know they need to make changes. There are advantages, however, to dealing with the European Union as opposed to individual states, because many of those individual states have conceded part of their sovereignty to the Union, including, for example, on trade, on tariffs, on sanctions. So American businesses need to deal with the European Union and the individual states. And there is some comfort in dealing with the Union because American companies know how to deal with the European Union. If you look at the states, for example, in the Balkans, where we've got a number of states that are trying to get into the EU, but they're not there yet. To get in, they're going to have to bring their legal systems in compliance with EU standards, and they're going to have to reduce corruption. And I think both of those things are also an advantage to the United States. If you look at, for example, Croatia, which entered the EU in 2013, since they entered, our exports to Croatia have increased, I think, they've tripled since they entered. So there are advantages. Clearly, there are problems with the EU. I know it, they need to address them, but there are reasons to deal with them nonetheless.
Thank you. Mr. Kapoor, so tell us what would you like to accomplish with Pakistan?
Senator, thank you for the question. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I think there are a number of areas where we could cooperate with Pakistan in the security realm. I think there will be instances where counterterrorism cooperation would be useful. We can also build out our relationship away from a sort of a myopic focus on security in the direction of trade and investment. And I know there are some opportunities there in critical minerals as well. So I think those are areas that I'd be interested in exploring.
Well, congratulations, each of you, on your nomination.
Yeah, we don't have, unless somebody comes in while I'm talking, we're going to go ahead and close this out. I don't see anybody. Again, I want to thank gentlemen for your willingness to serve our country. I very much appreciate it. And for the records, we're going to add Senator McCormick's introduction of Howard Brody, the ambassador, the nominee to the ambassador of Finland. Letter of support for Jacob Hellberg. Thank you all for the benefit of your testimony here in responses today. Before closing, I will order any letters of support the committee has received to be added to the record. I will also note for the information of members that the record will remain open until the close of business tomorrow, June 11th, including for the members to submit questions for the record. With the thanks of the committee, this hearing is now adjourned.